Good evening and welcome to The Bridge. I am Pastor Matt, and tonight I have the unique privilege to fill in for John Nettle, who, praise the Lord, got his second vaccination today and is at home resting from that. Asked me a couple weeks ago to fill in for him, and I said I'd be happy to do so. And tonight we have some special guests. This is, by the way, the show. If you're tuning in for the first time, this is the show where we bridge Sunday to Sunday, and we bridge our heads to our hearts, and we take what our pastor preached on Sunday morning, and we do our best to discuss it and try to apply it to our lives, put some wheels on it. Oftentimes when we hear the scripture, we're not really sure what to do with it. So this show exists to figure out what to do with the message. And tonight, I'm joined by a married couple in our church, Alyson and Randall. Alyson, Randall, glad to have you guys here tonight on the bridge.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Tell us about yourself.
Well, hey, I'm Randall. We moved out here from Tucson, Arizona, summer of 2019, and we both met each other musically. We did music together and performed in a band, and Alyson joined the military, and that's what brought us here to this area. And then, that's how we got involved with the church here.
Yeah.
Yes, I was in Navy choir, and I sang at Lieutenant Commander Nick Roush's retirement.
That's it.
And we hadn't found a church yet when we came out here. This is a couple months after moving from Arizona. And I remember looking around, like picking up the pamphlets while I was waiting, and everybody seemed so cool and so nice. And then, they bust out the electric guitar for Anchors Away at the end. I was like, okay, this is a church I want to go to.
This is my
I need
jam.
to check this out. This is right by my house. This is great. So we started coming, got plugged in, and the rest is history. Here we are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Almost a year and a half later.
I know.
Just wild. If you guys haven't, you've probably seen Alyson singing on our worship team on Sunday mornings. Got a beautiful voice. But what you may not know is Randall is also got some musical chops and some production. And the three of us, plus a couple of the others, worship and arts ministry, have been kind of grinding almost every Monday night for the last few weeks and throughout last fall, just writing music, getting together, producing some stuff. And it's our hope this year to be able to bring you guys an album from the TCACP Worship and Arts Ministry here, and they're going to be a big part of that as we move forward. And so we're so glad to have you guys not only on the bridge, but just as part of our church fam. And you and Fran and your daughter Frances is a joy to be around as well. So tonight we are talking kind of launching off of what Pastor Dan preached on Sunday morning with a message entitled, "They Left It All." And I'm going to go ahead and read for you. So if you've got your Bibles, you can turn to or turn on your Bible. I'm going to be reading from Matthew 4:18 through 22 tonight, as well as Luke 5:1 through 11. Because Pastor Dan took the same story, he kind of looked at it from two different angles. And so just to refresh you where we are starting tonight, we're starting in Matthew chapter 4, verse 18 says, "While walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers," Jesus saw two brothers, Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. And going on from there, he saw two brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, in the boat with Zebedee, their father, mending their nets, and he called them. Immediately, they left the boat and their father and followed him. And then we pick it up again in Luke chapter 5, verse 1. It's the same story with a little bit of a different take from Luke. On one occasion, while the crowd was pressing in on Jesus to hear the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret. And he saw two boats by the lake, but the fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, which is Simon's, he asked him to put out a little from the land, and he sat down and taught the people from the boat. And when he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep and let your nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we toiled all night and took nothing, but at your word I will let down the nets." And when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come out and help them. And they came and filled both the boats so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of the fish they had taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said, "Simon, do not be afraid. From now on you will be catching men." And when they had brought their boats to land, they left everything and followed him. Kind of a wild story, a little bit. I try to put myself in this situation, and I'm a fisherman, and this dude comes up and asks to get onto my boat and then to proceed to tell me how to do my job. This crazy miracle happens, and I immediately leave everything to follow him. It's just wild. And then I try to get my mind around that. You know, we look at this story now, 2,000 years removed, and we know who Jesus is. These guys don't necessarily know fully who Jesus is while this is happening. And yet, what prevents me from following Christ when he calls me there? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about because, you know, I remember what Dan was saying in that this is their job. So, you know, fishing is something, it's like, so I imagine myself in working some job like at a restaurant or something, like washing dishes or serving tables or something that's just common, and, you know, encountering somebody random like that and being so moved to walk away. And what I like about that is it sort of pulls you out of your mundane reality, the day-to-day normal existence, and suddenly now you're feeling called to take part in some kind of mission, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like there are certain moments in our lives where we do feel a calling like that, and this desire to walk away from everything that we expect and move into something and have faith in something like that.
Yeah. Well, and he's definitely, I mean, this is all these guys know, too. And this is comfortable, right? And I think looking at my own life, throughout my life, when I know Christ is calling me, most oftentimes that call comes to some kind of level of discomfort, right? He's calling me out of the comfort side. A lot of this year has just been calling us out of what we were really comfortable doing, and now we're all chilling at home. We're like, this is great. Like, this is the best life. And then we got comfortable doing that, and now we've got to actually start living our lives again. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to do that now. I mean, have you guys seen, like, any examples, like, how God has maybe called you from something to something, how it just took you totally out of your comfort zone?
Well, you know, definitely a lot of times the biggest thing I can think was uprooting our entire lives and coming to, you know, joining the Navy, moving across the country. And that was, you know, what we were doing. It just wasn't working, and like working so hard, not getting anywhere, and not feeling fulfilled in where we were. And it just was almost on a whim, which I never do anything on a whim.
Yeah.
I have a tendency to be very carefully regimented in every aspect of my life, and I end up boxing myself in because of that. And I found I get the best results when you just listen to that voice. This is what I need to do, and you go. Because the part that resonated with me with that story, you know, these men are fishermen, it's their profession, and they're not having a good time with it. They're probably giving it their all. They've applied all the tips and tricks that they can think to do, and it's just not working. But in their minds, they're like, oh, this is exhausting. It's frustrating. Why isn't this working? Because I know best, and it's still not working for me. And I fall into that trap a lot myself. I'm so tired all the time. I'm working so hard. I'm doing a great job because I'm good at this, but just why isn't this working for me? Why am I so exhausted all the time? And having that humility and openness for something completely new, and letting go of my desire to be the best at something, or like, like they said, we know what we're doing. We're the professionals here. You can step aside, buddy, on our boat.
Yeah.
When you let go of that, then a miracle can happen. And so that's what I really like about that part of the story. It really resonates.
Well, and even Pastor Dan, I wrote this down. He said, you can't give more than 100%. And then he asked a question. He said, what do you call people who say they give 110% all the time? Burnouts, right? And now that's such a common thing. I mean, I grew up playing ball, baseball. I mean, they're like, you better give 110% or you're not going to amount for anything in life. And so like that kind of mentality in our culture, in the business world, in the sports world, in the production world, whatever you're in the military, there's this call to give 110%, to go the extra mile, to be the best, to set yourself apart. So we bust our tails around the clock. And for what? Right? And then what inevitably happens? We burn out because we're not intended to live at that pace. One of the things that you're interested is Dan said this, and this is also a Jim Collins principle. Good is the enemy of best. I think we get ourselves trapped a lot of times in this idea of doing a lot of good things, but I'm not doing the best things. And for me, when I'm kind of in that mundane, I feel like there's something else out there. What do you guys think about that? I mean, have you ever been caught in a rut where you're like, yeah, I'm doing some good things, but there might be that one best thing that's suffering because I'm just doing a bunch of little good things?
For me, I've fallen victim to the opposite of that, of focusing too much on doing one thing and sacrificing a lot of little good things. When I feel like it would have been better to nurture a lot of little good things over time and not cut so many things off and try and have that 110% focus on the one thing that you think is your calling. And when Dan said that, I immediately started thinking about a moment in my life, because I was always in bands. When I was in high school, my dream was to play in bands and tour and play live shows, and that's what I pursued since I was like 12 years old. And I did do a lot of that, but I also remember so many moments where a lot of my friends were in college and were doing a lot of other things, and there was sports that I was good at, and I was always invited to do things, but I always turned it down and said no because I felt so much like I needed to give 110% to my music and my art. And looking back at it, when the band broke up, it was the ultimate crash for me, and I was burnt out. My band was burnt out because I was way too driven, and it was it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't going to last. And so I wish I had diversified my energy a little bit more in other opportunities that were right there for me. That in a lot of ways, I know what I feel God was calling me to do, and I still think that holds true. But at the same time, I ignored so many other things that God was calling me to do. And so
it's interesting, Rand. I mean, you said I look back on my life a lot of times. They say hindsight's 20/20. And when you kind of get out of the weeds of whatever situation you're in, you're like, God really was saying that all along. What prevents us from hearing it in the moment, though?
Self-desire for me, and I can only speak for myself, but I think we humans share similar characteristics. And for me, so I just wanted to achieve what I thought was my dream, and I wanted to be successful, and I wanted glory, and I wanted, to be in control, or to feel like I was in control. And so a lot of those goals ultimately were somewhat selfish. And I think that when we're in the moment, it's hard to identify what parts of us are being selfish, because we might feel selfish for something that we think is for the greater good. But in so many little ways, we're sort of denying, at least I was, denying a lot of other good as well. And looking back at it, that drive, I think selfishness was, from a young age, was something I didn't realize was ultimately held me back in the long run. And it kind of it sort of blocked some friendships that would have should have carried out longer, I think.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and that just goes to that point of having the right vision for your life, and not necessarily what you think the vision is for your life, but what God's vision is for your life. You know, you look at any strong company or weak company, it is always driven by the ability to see, right? The ability for the vision. If the vision is strong, the company is going to be strong. If the vision is weak, the company is going to be weak, because vision ultimately drives all of the little decisions that we make each day. All little strategies, all little goals, all the objectives that we set in our lives, they're driven by that vision. And what it sounds like what I'm hearing is you had this vision, but it was what Randall wanted for his life. You know, I grew up playing baseball and was really, really good at it, and had college scouts and going at that, and began kind of sensing this call to full-time ministry in my freshman year of high school, and really fought that, because I was like, man, pastors don't make any money. I can go, God, come on, man, just give me like 3 years in the MLB. I'll sign that rookie deal, and it'll be done, and I'll give you 20% of what I make, you know? And that justification, or that begging of, or just that selfish, like, we all have these desires, you know, that ultimately can conflict with the desires the Lord might have for us. And one of the things that I've learned, and maybe one of you can speak to this, I've learned that when God speaks, there's like 100% peace, even if it doesn't make sense. And oftentimes it's not like that he's speaking with 100% peace over here, but whatever I'm doing, girls that I dated, it was like, okay, it was like a 98% peace here, but there's still like that 2% that's off, you know, or yeah, I'm in this particular job, and I'm like 98% at peace with myself. And I've learned, looking back on things, seeing that kind of those things fall apart, it's like, yeah, you know what? I didn't have a peace about that the whole time. Kind of looking, you're like, in retrospect, I knew God was speaking. I knew there was kind of a lack of peace in my soul, but I didn't really know. I think I justified it. Again, it goes back to selfishness, but I tried to justify it out. Oh, well, it's still a good thing. Like, it's 98% there. But again, that goes back to Dan's thing. We trade the best for the good, right? I mean, how about it, you guys? I mean, have there been moments where you kind of look back in hindsight, Allison, maybe, and you're like, yeah, God was right there, and I was totally just something.
Oh, absolutely. So many times. Like,
Yeah.
I do, like, most of the time, honestly, like, and I look back, I'm like, wow, why did it take so long to get my act together, to finally listen? And I think for me, it's just getting so caught up in the daily grind, right? And again, identifying with those fishermen, like, if it was me, I might have just been like, okay, that was cool, but, like, to be honest, I have rent to pay, so, like, I really need to, like, work on selling these fish and, like, try and copy his technique so I can get some more fish tomorrow.
Right.
Like, it's all about that day to day, and finding, like that's what I've really been working on and finding a lot of, you know, peace from, is taking a moment to pause and to listen. And if something is no longer serving me, like, stopping my justification, stopping the, but I've spent so long on this, but I've invested so much energy into this project. Well, this is something that I should do, and this is something that everyone else is doing. Let all of that go and just listen. Like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah. And how do you know? And how do you know? Because there's a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of voices out there. You know, we've got the voices of family members. We've got the voices of friends. We have the voice of pastors. And I'm one of them, but pastors aren't always right either. I mean, and that's what is so important for me, you know, is to make sure what I say is truthful. But I mean, there's so many voices and a crowd of voices. How do you know the right one to listen to when it's calling?
I mean, I have a couple of thoughts on that. For me, I think you don't really know. When I look back at moments where I feel God's calling and it seems clear, I think, again, for me, it's letting all the voices be heard, and allowing room for that team mentality to play a role, and that sort of in itself being part of the way that God's communicating to you. It's sort of not shutting out the voices that you don't think are right to try and go with what your gut is or what you think God's trying to say, but to really, truly maintain that open heart and that open mind and listen to all the voices around you, and then really try and amalgamate every voice into one general direction. And I think God would speak more in that kind of a way, in that you don't really know really where it's going to come from, and it's always God's voice is going to come in many different forms and different ways at different points in time. And so I think it's really important to keep that open ear for all the voices, because one thing that we do, and I've done a lot, is we snuff out that little voice in there. We don't listen to our parents because they're our parents, or we don't listen to something our friends said because, God couldn't be speaking through them.
Right.
It's got to be some other thing.
Some
that
euphoric,
so you tune out God's actual voice in the form of all these other little voices around you, and try and tune into something that you think God is that's not really there, because you're too busy ignoring God's voice, trying to tune into it.
Right.
And so for me, I think the exercise is really listening to everybody around you. And that goes right back to what Dan was saying, is that we can't do it all ourselves, right? We've got to be a team. And so part of your network or your connections, the people around you or whatever you're doing in your life, the people that you're working with or are involved with, their equal say is really part of how God is going to guide you. And I feel that way because all the little decisions and all the little voices that have led us from Tucson, Arizona a couple years ago to where we are right here, right now, today, all those little voices and every single person who's made a little suggestion here or there, even if I don't really know why or where it's going, just kind of showing up and trusting that because something's directing you this way, to show up and just sort of do your part. And my question is, how can I be of service? That's something I've been trying to incorporate when I don't really know, but I feel called to some things.
That's good. And I think that perspective right there is what is missing in our culture, and it's missing especially in our churches, because we live in a consumer-driven world, and you see the commercials are all about you, and all about you, and they're all about me and what I get. And the biblical idea is not that we get and then we give, is that we give and then we serve and then we get and then we experience, right? And that's kind of counterintuitive in a lot of ways. But Randall, what's interesting when we're talking about kind of this community idea and how God can actually use people in our lives. Thought about that illustration, you probably have heard this, where a man's stuck on a roof, right? And there's like water all around, and like a boat comes by. He's like, "Hey man, I'm here to rescue you." And he's like, No, man, it's cool. I'm waiting for God to rescue me. And he's like, okay. And then like a helicopter flies in. He's like, "Hey man, I'm here to rescue you." And he's like, "No, man, I'm waiting for God to rescue me." And then like 6 years goes by, guy dies, goes to heaven. He shows up, Peter meets him at the gate. He's like, "Dude, I mean, I waited for God on the roof. Like, what has happened?" He's like, "We sent you a boat and an airplane, dummy," and it's like, and I think a lot of times we sit and we think that waiting on the Lord is simply waiting for some of this crazy burning bush experience in our lives, and some kind of crazy mountaintop audible voice that's just going to be like, "Randall, this is what you should do." And sometimes it's quiet, but that's why I think it's so important to surround ourselves with godly people in our lives, to have that community, especially a community of believers who love us and have our best interest at heart and love God and are trying to serve the same purposes that we're serving. so that when we do run into those moments of confusion in our lives, we have some people in our lives that we're close to that we can trust. Because for me, that's the big thing. I've got to know that I can trust you. And I got to know that you care more about me than your own opinion, right? But that's, again, more about giving that kind of, being able to model that kind of behavior in my life. I mean, I think it's imperative that we surround ourselves with, because the Bible even says that it's spiritual persons that can give us insight to the things that we need to know, you know? And so it's so critical to be a part of the community of faith that's there for you, you know, and that can help you sometimes, because, you know, you've heard of the blind spot analogy. I mean, we all have our own blind spots, and we can't even see sometimes that we're running down the wrong path. And somebody else can kind of check that and be like, yo, bro, like, get back in your lane.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, I think that's why we're here at our church too. We're so big about small group ministry, because you can come on Sunday mornings and you can kind of slip in and slip out, be kind of anonymous, right? Like, you can just come and sit in the back, sing some songs, listen to a message, and then go. But what we really desire here is that people truly connect with God, but they also connect with other people. And we're not just trying to be a friendly church. We're trying to be a church where friends are made, right? And where community is happening, and then impact in our community is happening at that point. So I fully agree with that, in that God does not usually just speak out of a moving cloud with rain coming down and it's like a message in the sky. You know, it's like sometimes it's that quiet friend that you're kind of ticked off at when he says that one thing to you, and you're like, what do you know, man? Shut up. And then it's like a week later, you're like, yeah, he's right, you know? And so, and have those people that can challenge you too, that aren't just kind of like patting you on the back. You know, I think that's another important, to have some of those people that can really challenge some of the decisions, can see some of those blind spots. One of the things that Dan also said that I thought was interesting, he said every season has a reason. And that was very rhymey, so I was like, oh, nice, bonus points, 5 points for you. But every season has a reason. And, you know, this particular season that we've been in has now been a full year. And that's longer than seasons. Like, I'm used to like 3 months and something changing in, you know, in nature, right? And so we've kind of gotten accustomed to these ideas like, oh yeah, there's this season, but it's only for a little bit. If I can just hold on. Now, Florida, you guys are from Arizona, so you're like 1.2 seasons a year, I'm sure, right? Like, Florida's like, we mow our grass 11 months out of the year, and then we go, you know, we don't go to the beach 1 month out of the year. That's basically the 2 seasons. It's mowing season and non-beach season. And so, or you could say like non-fishing season. And, but this has literally felt like a Florida year, you know, like one of those things. It's like, when is this humidity? When is this heat? When is this going to end? Are we going to get anything new? And, you know, it's hard to see the reason. Sometimes we may not even know the reason. But I was just going to ask you guys, has God taught you or shown you or moved in you in anything during this season? It can be good, it can be bad. I mean, but has there been any kind of movement in your life of God through this long, drawn-out season?
Absolutely. This whole year I've been on a, schedule of maybe once every other week an existential crisis.
Yes. Yes.
You know, 1 week I bake bread, and then the next week, what am I doing with my life? And and as difficult as it's been, I'm so grateful for that opportunity to really reflect, because again, I make myself really busy. That's my thing. And I, constantly working on it, but it wasn't a possibility.
Yeah.
I was not able. I was going crazy. I was messaging my supervisor, said, what can I do? Please give me something, anything to do. They said, nope, just muster in the morning, and, we'll let you know when it's time to come back. And I was like, who even am I if I'm not working? And then it's like, wow, that's really sad. So for me, that was a wake-up call from God to examine, why am I having such a hard time not working? I should love this.
Yeah.
This should be fantastic for me.
Yeah.
And then that just led to realization after realization, and just the stillness of this COVID time, the quietude and the pause in the pace of life has allowed me to have so many realizations, like, with very few exceptions, like, I realized I've never really had friendships that didn't have a purpose, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's all tied to work. It wasn't for the sake of connecting with people. It was, let's get together and do this thing. And it's like, wow,
Yeah.
that is not good.
Yeah.
That's not healthy. That's like, they're great friends,
Yeah.
but like that soul connection that
There's
you
like
get
an
with
agenda
people.
that's attached to it.
There's
Yeah.
an agenda to it. It's like,
Yeah.
I have had an agenda to all my human
Yeah.
relationships
Yeah.
in my life. That's not good.
Yeah.
And so, as much as I love to complain about COVID and not being able to do stuff, like, not being able to do stuff was a huge blessing for me, and it let me, take stock of where I'm at and where I'm going, because, I'm still young. I have time
Yeah.
to make changes, and then I'll come up to more things, and I'll make changes for that too, and constantly listening. But just the ability to, to stop and listen to what God is saying, like, hey,
Yeah. It gave you some space finally.
yes,
Yeah.
to have that breathing room to
Yeah.
to just hear what he has to say, which mostly is chill out.
Yeah. Just
Allison.
chill. Yeah. And enjoy the people
Yes,
in your
enjoy-
life.
Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be about accomplishing anything and everything possible under the sun.
Yeah.
Just
And another thing that we both encountered throughout this year of quarantine was that neither of us could go to work. We both at some point realized that we thought we were these self-motivated people where we did things because we wanted to, and we were in control, and we were self-motivated, and it wasn't really because of anybody else. We did what we did because it was what we did, of our own volition. But turns out that actually, I thought I was going to have all this time to be creative, like I could just wake up every day and like write music, and there's nothing stopping me now. And but what I realized was I wasn't motivated, and it's because I wasn't inspired and I wasn't excited. And it turns out that the thing that inspires me to do anything at all, really, to begin with, and Allison felt the same way, was to be seen by other people, was to do it for other people or with other people, to be recognized for being talented or inspiring or excited about something. But if it's just you, that the self-motivation really isn't there.
No.
It's there was a big demotivation, and it was due to the lack of inner engagement with other people. And I had not really truly realized that before. As far as I knew up until that point, I was a self-motivated person. But it turns out I'm not self-motivated, and I need other people to motivate me to be the best that I can be.
Yeah.
And I know that Allison went through that same revelation.
Well, and I think all of us did to some level, extrovert, introvert. I mean, I think for me, I've always valued relationships, and then not being able to have them in the capacity that I did. And it was all of this Zoom nonsense, and it was YouTube, and it was all of these things, and it was like, I was starved. One of the things my pastor growing up used to say all the time, he said, the most important word in any language is love. And he said the second most important word in any language is relationship. It's because in relationships we experience love, right? You can't experience love apart from a relationship. And I think that was what was so difficult for me this year, is that you said, you kind of have an agenda hung to a lot of the relationships. And so there was kind of this ulterior motive when God gave us relationships to experience love, to experience, his love through people and experience other people's loves. And you look at what people long for most in their lives, whether it comes, they can say this or that, but we all desire to be loved and to love others because that's who we were created and that's what we're created to do. And that was just kind of ripped out from us. And now, thank God, we have like vaccinations that are becoming more widespread, and cases are down, and restrictions are kind of like being lifted a little bit, and hopefully we'll be able to experience a little bit more freedom. But that's what I've enjoyed just with the three of us getting together and just jamming in the studio a few times a month. It's just like, I'm so glad to see you.
Yeah.
I don't even care. Let's just go to Manor Hill. Let's go hang out, grab some food, grab some drinks, just chill and just like be around. I mean, we hung out with Ola and Danny, and you guys have really never met any of those. It really didn't even matter. We were like, another human, just another person. And so I think that was what I'm looking forward to most of getting, I guess, back to a normal or moving into a new normal is re-engaging those relationships that I've just kind of lost touch with people. Last night I got up here with James Eaton. You guys may remember James. He's the one with like the flying V neck guitars and is always jamming over here on stage, right? He and I got up here last night. First time I saw him in over a year.
Wow.
And we just played some guitar, and it was good.
Nice.
And so I definitely feel you. The idea of the value of relationships and to really truly seek after relationships just for the sake of relationships. I think that's going to provide us an environment that when we want to hear from God, or we want to hear, kind of get some direction, that collaborative idea, we're better together. I know that it's been like the coin phrase of every business and every like commercial, we're better together, and it kind of lost its luster after a while, but it is very, very true. And so whether we ever figure out the reason, I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to approach it, but there could be a reason or several reasons that we got here. And it's not so much about the reason, but what we learned from this particular season. So, well, guys, it has been a joy being with you here tonight on the bridge. Do you have any other concluding thoughts? Or
Concluding thoughts, man, we're just getting started.
Well, we were going to talk about roadblocks and investments and aliens. And what else were some of the pre-show topics that we were going to... Cryptocurrency, Crypto Night.
Kryptonite, Superman.
GameStop.
Roblox.
Three Doors Down. Didn't they sing something about kryptonite, I think, back in the day?
Yeah.
I'm more crazy than what you call. Yeah, there you
It's
go.
So
that's like 2004, Matt. Anyway, so we won't go down that way. At least it wasn't Nickelback, amen. Well, tonight we always recommend a song for you to go just check out, something you may not be as familiar with. It just kind of hits on kind of the overarching theme. Tonight, it is not anything by Three Doors Down, but it's a song by Housefires called We Say Yes. I'm going to give you a preview of the lyrics. It says, "You knock on the door of my heart, and I will answer you. I will answer you. You make me a covenant of love, and I will walk with you. Yes, I will walk with you. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid anymore. Your love has made a way. We say yes, God. We accept the invitation to your love. We say yes, God. You and you alone can have it all." And so we're so glad that you guys have joined us tonight on the bridge. Just want to encourage you. As we've talked about tonight, a lot of times God is speaking. In fact, I will say this blanket statement: God is always speaking to us. The problem does not lie within God speaking, but us listening and hearing and obeying. And so my prayer tonight, my encouragement to you, eFam, those watching this weeks from now, months from now, is that whatever you can sense God calling you to do, say yes to Him right where you're watching this. And you'll see God just unlock some incredible things that you would never have been able to imagine or dream of on your own. Hey, thanks again for watching. Don't forget to like. Here's the shameless plug, right? Like, subscribe, but most of all, share this experience with somebody in your life who could use this. Be a blessing to others. Bless us by blessing others. And we'll see you next week here on the bridge.